I've said it before and I'm probably going to say it again, although I can't even really prove that it's true or not. But the 1x30 probably has paid for itself more than any other tool in my shop. But I don't finish any very few items on the 1x30. It is all in preparation work to do the sharpening in order to get to the refining stage. In tonight's Thursday Night Grind, we're going to do some work on the 1x30, particularly restoring the tip on this knife. What's up, everybody? My name is Matt, and welcome to episode 42 of the Thursday Night Grind, where every Thursday night I go onto YouTube and I sharpen something on the bench at my sharpening business in New Hampshire, the American Edge. And tonight is no exception. We're going to be doing a little bit of knife restoration prior to getting into some sharpening. Before we get into that, I just want to let you know again that this Thursday Night Grind is brought to you by the Guild of Professional Sharpeners. You can learn more about that at guildofsharpeners.org. It's where we are building a community of people who are learning how to sharpen and then start a business to monetize that skill. It's growing, and with that there's a lot going on, and there are too many highlights to share with you with what's going on over there, but just some things that stick out to me. Was a comment from Vance about the amount that he's grown. I had to go back and look. Like, Vance and I started working together in August, and he's committed, and he's so into it, and he's come a long way, and he's doing really cool work for being only a couple months in. It's crazy. It's really inspiring for me, and it's a lot of fun. And one other thing that is kind of typical, but just to illustrate the value in the guild, is we did a business card sharing. So everybody's post a picture of your business card and who designed it, where'd you get it printed, what are some thoughts. So we got to see how everybody is shaping their thoughts around business cards, how we're using them. I shared some tips on, like, one thing that I did is I made a goal to give away 5 business cards a week, not necessarily from a marketing perspective, which it is, right? But more from getting in the habit of talking about the project that I'm working on, and getting past my own like inner inhibitions of like talking about my business and like putting myself out there. So that it worked pretty well for me. It has led to some work that I'm still doing right now. So anyway, there's tons more going on there. It's a lot of fun, and if sharpening and then monetizing is interesting to you, you're going to want to check out Guild of Sharpeners. Again, that is at guildofsharpeners.org. Clearly, based on that intro, we're going to be doing the majority of this repair work on the 1x30. Before we go over there, I do want to swing down to the bench so I can just talk through really how my own method has evolved in repairing tips on knives. So let's go there right now. First, I want to talk through a few things here. So clearly that's a pretty gnarly busted tip. The other thing that I have observed, it might be a little harder for you to see, but there's a pretty okay sized little dinger right there, a chip. I actually use the words chip and ding to refer to different things. Ding is like if you drop your knife and it gets bent and you run your fingers down the edge, like not on the blade, but down like this, you can feel a little like dent. A chip is when there's a piece missing, and hopefully you can see that little piece missing. Okay, so a couple of things to think through here. When I have these little chips, what I might do first is grind the edge to get the chips out. That's going to bring this back a little bit. It's going to have some impact on the tip. But I don't necessarily want to grind all of this off and make a new tip from the edge side of the knife. And that is largely because most of these knives, this has a distal taper and a taper this way. So the knife gets thinner as you go this way, and then it gets thinner down here. So the thinner the cutting edge, the more keen the edge is going to feel. So what we can do is instead grind back the spine, try to match a profile and make it nice and clean to bring the spine down so that you still have a nice thin cutting edge. But by getting past the other chips first, you save yourself a little bit of grinding on the spine. The other thing that I was thinking was that at least when I was starting out, I would kind of Sharpie my way, like kind of pick my line and Sharpie it out. I I don't do that as much anymore. I could though, but that's a nice way to do it. Or Sharpie the profile that you want to go away, and then grind the material that has the Sharpie on it. If you're not feeling super confident about it, it gives you time to kind of trace it out and see how it'll look before you start removing metal. We're going to shift to a voiceover here to facilitate walking through this process. Right here is just what's going on. I'm going to take that 120 grit belt off of the 1x30 that gets most of the use and put on the 60 grit belt. A couple of things to think about here is, one is that when you're doing work like this, you're pulling off a lot of material. Anytime I'm using the 60 grit belt, I automatically put on my safety glasses because you're pulling off a lot of steel. And then what we're going to see here, I'm putting the top on that 1x30. When I'm doing cutting the spine, you'll see how I have the top part there rocked back on the 1x30. That gives me more access to the round part and the slack bevel. But for sharpening the bevels itself, I pulled it back down just to keep anything from flying up at me. You'll also notice that I put on my new apron. Look at that thing, it's sweet. Got that from Sharpening Supplies. It is denim, it is cool, and I noticed that some of my clothes were getting a little bit of debris on them, so I like that. Here we go. Like I said, we're going to use the 60 grit belt. We're going to get past that chip first before we start working on the spine and getting that chip out. This actually took quite a bit of work. One thing that has really been working well for me is right now I'll look at that burr that comes up. That's what I'm doing right there. I can see the light reflecting off the burr. That's working really well for me, better than the fingertip or the thumb or the whatever. Like, I find that I like working the nails, but for those little chips, I can see where it's not putting up. See right there, look at that. There's not a burr coming up on that little tip. There I am, just double checking with my thumbnail. But I like that the light reflects the burr, and I can see when I can see that chip because there's no burr coming up there. So I can make sure that I grind enough to get the whole edge back. And that's important when you do the cut test, which we'll get to in a bit. If you don't get all that chip back, it's going to catch on that paper, which is, it's still going to work fine in the kitchen, right? But since we're doing this, let's do it. And let's speed through the rest of this bevel grinding. Okay, on to grinding the spine. Notice that I have that top guard rocked back. I get access to all that slack belt area. Some things that should catch your eye here. One, I'm checking temperatures a lot. Let me get my water. There we go. Dip, dip. All right, another thing to check out is I'm going to be working back and forth across the belt. I'm not picking one spot, right? And we check temps, we cool it off. We do that a lot. Couple seconds on the belt, cool it off. I got my hands on it. I run my fingers down the edge first. See how I just did that? And I can tell when I'm putting too much heat into it. Let's get over here and get a better view. Yep, doing a lot of slack belt work. The tip is where you need the most material removed, but I want to blend that in. That knife had a relatively straight spine, so it's going to take a bit of work to grind the spine back while getting the tip down. That's why, man, you got a 60 grit belt is a huge time saver right here. Like, we're pulling off a lot of material. That's the other thing. Like, notice that I have the volume down, but that shop vac is running. It's pulling all of that dust into that HEPA filter on the shop vac. Going up and down, back and forth on the belt, cooling it off consistently, running my fingers down it. That's a temperature check every time I do that. So I can tell if I'm using too much pressure, putting the knife on the belt for too long of a time. It's a feedback mechanism. It's way better to cool it frequently and never have it heat up than to one time get it too hot, right? So that's something you really got to pay attention to. Look, I'm checking temperatures all the time. Yep. Okay, so you got the gist of this. Let's speed it up and get to the next part. Real quick back on the bench here. So that's the new profile, tip restored. What you will notice if you do this, so that was all done on the 60 grit belt to make time, right? Well, what's going to happen when you grind the spine, you're going to put up a burr right here. So I'm going to take this to a 120 grit belt on the 1x30. I'm going to just I also want to try to match the surface finish on the spine. This is real rough right here now, so I'll do a little bit more work there, but I will also touch that up when we go to the next tool, which will be the blade grinding attachment. So I'm going to go 120 grit belt, do the bevels just to clean them, just to get them slightly more refined. I'm going to start blending that in with the 120 grit belt on the 1x30, and then we'll go to the work sharp with the blade grinding attachment. I'm going to kind of blend the spine in. I'm going to take care of the burrs on either side that have formed here. That'll be nice and smooth. That's going to be real quick, real easy, real light pass just to pull that burr off. Then we will refine the edge with the coarse, and then the fine, and then the cloth belt with the green compound on the work sharp with blade grinding attachment. So I just put the 120 grit belt on. Here I am just taking a pass or two on the bevels and the spine, and I want to use this time to talk about when I get asked, like, are my knives even worth sharpening? And in this case, like, this is a real nice knife, and the tally here is going to come up to something on the order of 20 bucks to grind out the chip, the tip, put it, grind new bevels and sharpen it. Total bill 20 bucks. This knife, getting this knife back in pristine working order is so worth 20 bucks. This one is worth all that work. I can't say that for all of them, but this one for sure. I have been digging these work sharps with blade grinding attachments. I have two in line here, which you can see. I set them to 18 degrees, which I was just checking. I put the burr up on the 1x30. And now I'm refining the edge with the coarse belt on this one, and you'll see a fine belt on the next one, and then finishing it with a cloth belt and the green compound. I actually have my third work sharp with blade grinding attachment attached, shipping to me soon, so it's actually shipped to me already. So I'm excited to get that in the shop. It's going to speed up my routine even a little bit more, and I'm loving the results that I'm getting off this tool. I should also mention that Worksharp has really been generous to the... Oh, hold on. Here we are. So now, remember I was saying we got to get that burr off. We got to clean. I want to blend in the surface finish on the spine, and I want to pull that burr off. So I'm doing this on this belt, and that belt, it's going to do just fine. There's still a little bit, right? I got to feel it. I'm feeling with my fingers, any sort of texture difference. I got to get that, break that burr on the edge, get a little feedback, do a little bit of work, go real slow, nice and easy, feedback, do a little work. But anyway, with the buying this system, when you are a member of the guild, it starts to cover the cost of membership to the guild, and that's something that I'm passionate about and I'm beginning to bring into reality. So if that's some incentive for you to come join the community, be sure to check it out, guildofsharpeners.org. Moving over to the other system here, I have all the angles set up the same and fire this one up. Now I'm continuing to refine the bevel. Since I swap belts on this machine a lot, I do have to, they don't track the same, so I do have to adjust the tracking. 1 inch per second is the recommended speed. Once you get up into these high belts, I don't really have an issue with heat coming into the steel at all. I haven't noticed it. You can see, like, I'm holding the blade the whole time, and I'll touch it. It hasn't been an issue, but I have been getting great edges. I do at least 2 passes per side on this belt, and that gets most of the little flakes of burr off. But when we move on to the other belt, all of the flakes go off. So here we are. We'll put this new belt on. This is a cloth belt offered by Worksharp with the green compound. Like I said, it doesn't track the same, but here we'll just paint a little compound on there. This stuff is sweet, man. This will bring the knife alive. Light pressure. Let the belt do the work. Nice and smooth. Don't run the tip off the side of the belt, right? Like that's what, I guess people have a lot of issues with rounding the tips off with this tool, and maybe they're not stopping early enough. Again, 2 passes per side has kind of been the sweet spot for me on the cloth belt. And I touch it up with compound every batch of knives on that order. The monthly theme in the guild this month is the Tormek, although I'm not using that today. In one of the videos I did for the guys in the guild, I did share my thoughts on using the newspaper as a cut test. I recognize that no one's using this knife to cut paper, but when you do a bunch of them, you start to see, you get feedback, and then you know if you missed a nick or anything like that. So there is value in doing that, and I just wanted to share that. Congratulations, you made it to the end of another Thursday Night Grind, episode 42. Before you go, make sure you do the things to help me help you more. Those are thumbs up, subscribe, leave a comment, and then go into the description and buy a t-shirt that represent the American Edge wherever you are. Thank you, and I will see you next week.